Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. So this is one I have been looking forward to for a while. I've finally been able to nail down Jarek from the formerly Maladex team, now Axo Trade, to find out all about the project. I've talked about it here a few times. You're probably familiar with the white paper they put out. So Jarek, it's great to have you on the channel. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite, Paul. And hi, everyone.
Okay, so look, let's jump into it. For people that haven't heard you in Twitter Spaces or seen you around the Cardano space, can you give the high level of who you are or where you fit into Cardano, and then we'll get into the project and everything. And for people out there, timestamps will be down below because I'm hoping to get through a lot of different topics here, and I'll put all the timestamps below for people looking for specific stuff.
So I'm Jarek Hirniak. I'm the founder and architect of the Axo trading protocol, and I'm also CEO of Generation Lambda, a financial software engineering company. My previous experience includes building multi-billion absolute return, high-frequency trading and algorithmic trading strategies in Stale Securities and UBS. And before that, I've been researching machine learning algos in Microsoft Research. I'm also certified quantitative researcher, so basically people who model the financial markets, and I'm a graduate of the University of Edinburgh in informatics.
Nice, a lot of experience there, a lot of trading experience as well to
actually wanted to touch one thing more. I think I'm probably one of the people who got into Cardano through Haskell. So I've been at the Haskell Lab conference in 2019, and Phil Lauder was giving the presentation about formal verification in Agda. And he even didn't mention the word Cardano, right? I just talked to him, after the presentation, like the Hangout room, 2019 COVID times, everything is remote. But him being, my previous professor, I tend to chat up more about him, and he said, he actually doing that formal verification for this Pluto score that's part of the Cardano blockchain. I was like, oh wow, well, so then there are people in blockchain who actually do things correctly, and that sparked my interest.
Okay, yeah, I suppose one question that was going to come was why Cardano over the other chains with EUTXO? I know you mentioned high frequency trading with speed of blockchain mightn't have been a perfect match for that, but why Cardano?
Great question. So actually the idea for Axo existed in my head for a very long time. I would say at least for the last 4 years. And it was like my pet project when I started working in Stale Securities, something that I was tinkering in within my head. But if you would want to publish something like that in a decentralized manner, and decentralization for me means trustless. So, you may have a decentralized blockchain, which actually is not possible to be trusted because you have MEV like on Ethereum, right? Or you may have some other shenanigans. And first, Cardano seemed, even at the time, quite decentralized, but much more importantly, it has this one crucial building piece, which is off-chain computation. So now you can have this very complex machinery doing the real trading, not some naive like AMM or some other simplified model to fit it into the blockchain. But then what you submit onto the chain is the light proof. So you have on-chain validation, and this idea is so brilliant. I think you have to get people like Phil Lauder, Agos Kiakis to come up with that. When you look at the reason, oh yeah, that's obvious, right? Yeah, but nobody did it before somebody said we should be doing that. And that exactly brought me to Cardano, because Cardano was the right tool to build Axo, and actually, frankly, the only tool.
Great. I always like to ask that of projects like why Cardano. Some people came for the wrong reasons in the beginning and not for what Cardano can offer. So it's great to hear that the core of your reason is what Cardano brings to the table. So moving on to what is Axo Trade? Some people might be familiar with it as Maladex, but you guys have rebranded now to Axo Trade. I really like the rebrand, looks very sleek. Can start off with the high level of what it is, and we'll get into different parts of it then.
Fantastic. Axo protocol is a trading protocol, so it's much more than a DEX. So DEX is usually one trading strategy, which is, for for example, AMM. So, like you lock some assets, they move on the, predefined liquidity curve. You may have some slightly modified liquidity curve, for example, like in the case of Curve protocol or Celsius, especially for the stable coins, or you may have some protocols that try to mimic the order book design. But again, like order book is only two strategies, which is like limit order and market order. And Axo is all the order types and all the trading strategies. And we achieve ability to reflect all of them using what we call programmable swaps. So programmable swaps allows you to define limit order, market order. If you even want to do AMM, well, go ahead. You can do that using programmable swaps. If you want to do some real stochastic market making, then absolutely go for that. You can actually build a complex market making model where you are incentivized for tightening the spread in the order book. I don't know if you will have question about the order book, but I can talk about it now or later because we don't have order book, but we still show the order book. And then, like very also unique aspect of that is if you go to exchange, like that has market and limit orders, and sometimes they have stop loss and other types. Well, technically, those order types are not in the exchange because they just automatically monitor the market, and the time comes right, they just insert it. In Axo protocol, like your programmable swap, like for example, like if you have a tool like order, like you buy something and then you have stop loss, we have like a bracket stop loss and take profit. It's literally in the exchange, right? So if your stop loss or your take profit is the best offer at the given time, and that was the first time you reveal the information compared to others the same price, well, your order is going to be taken. You don't have this race condition where suddenly everybody rushes to execute the custom order type. So another analogy could be you can have a lot of trading bots, and some people I bet like who listen to you wrote trading bots, for example, like in the Hummingbot, and what you would do is like you would write like 1,000 lines of Python code that just wraps usually around the exchange API and market and limit orders. Well, in Axo, first, you don't have to write the 1,000 limits because usually like 900 of these lines of code deals with just the exchange API. And another, like 80 probably just takes the right data from the exchange. All of that is built in and provided. So, like you can draw a simple diagram strategy composer, or write a simple, like a trading strategy in a few lines of code. And bang, here you have something that's not only equivalent to that complex code, but now also you have the guarantees of the fair execution, which you never have when you're actually just monitoring the market from your computer and checking for the conditions and, like the disadvantage of speed or otherwise. So that's a fair market, and the market where you can define any arbitrary trading goals that you may have.
So a lot to unpack there. So we'll go back on a few bits of it. So you talked about AMM dexes, order book dexes, kind of what they are. AMM involves, for people who haven't seen them, liquidity pools where you have to attract liquidity. And when you are putting your funds in, you have to put in both assets into the pool. And then it just does market orders, or it does, market orders. Limit orders then is where you can set the price you're willing to buy or sell at. You guys are you somewhere in the middle, or how does it work? I seen on your site about individual smart contracts for each order. That's something I want to hear a bit more about, how that actually works, because I think that leads into allowing the different order types with custody of funds and stuff like that. So can you talk about how that works? So if I place a trade on Axo Trade, how that works, or how is there one contract created for each trade?
Brilliant question. So first of all, yes, a smart contract has to exist for each programmable swap. However, a majority of the programmable swap would have the Cardano script already existing. So for instance, like the market or the limit or the stop loss brackets, etc., they would be already pre-compiled when the exchange is released. So then you have nothing to pay for or nothing, like to actually generate, because it already exists. So when you write your programmable swap, it literally compiles down to the same code that already exists on the chain. And then a lot of trading strategies will compile to very similar witness. So witness is the piece of the code that's validating programmable swap code on chain that basically ensures that whatever you define programmable swap behaves exactly according to the specification. And another thing about that, its witness is a logical expression. So even slightly different programmable swaps will compile down to the same logical expression because they have the same witness requirement. So unless you're writing something very novel, you will already have the script that already exists on chain. And also that's a nice and neat property of the programmable swaps because they define only the language of trading. So they are in a sense self-auditing. We have a formal verification team, like building all those models in Agda and checking what can be done within those models. So in a sense, we always have very tight bounds, what can be done. So we can think of every programmable swap, like what you generate from that. It's totally self-auditing. What you see is exactly what you get on chain. And in this rare cases, you have to generate the script. So basically this goes to the script compilation backend. It takes your programmable swap, it generates that, and you as the first generator of the script have to sign on that you have this notification in the wallet. That's the transaction you want to create, creating this reference script, and then you submit and bank, there it is. And then anybody can reference it. So for example, if somebody would write the same strategy, it would reference the same script. And that's a both neat property of programmable swaps and Cardano because the same scripts are going to have the same hash. So you always use the existing scripts if they exist.
Okay, nice. So really you guys couldn't have launched before Vassal because you needed things like reference scripts that are there. Otherwise costs would have been crazy to try and run something.
We could do exactly what everybody else has been doing, and it would be have exactly the same consequences for our other protocols. So everybody else before Vassal, literally what they have been doing, right? When you logged something under the script address was the hash of the script itself. So every transaction you wanted to interact with that script actually would submit the entire code in the transaction. One of the parameters of the transaction would be the actual script code, and you would send it over, and really it would serve two purposes. Like the first, it would be checked if this script compiles to the same hash. So if it's the same script, because it's very unlikely you would be able to forge a script with the different, with the same hash. And the second, actually use this script to move forward in that UTXO. So we could exactly do the same thing, but I think when you listen to that, you hear how crazy it is. So we really got a proper upgrade with Vassal because this is literally the same script every time. And what's more, it's even staying on the chain because the script is submitted, in this compile down to the bytecode CBOR format. And it stays on chain. So we literally had, let's say if a DEX on Cardano already existed, created 1 million transactions up to this point, we had this one script submitted 1 billion times to the blockchain.
Yeah, definitely a lot more optimal now with what's available. So when I create a market order on the chain, it creates the programmable swap behind it. Well, actually, a market order should execute straight away. We'll say a limit order. The funds stay in my wallet, do they, until that is executed? So I sign the contract to say they have permission to take the funds when the order is available, or how does that execution work? I know I've seen about custody on your site and how it remains with the person.
I wish that was the case because that would be the ideal design, when the funds are actually in your wallet and you can see them all the time. And that's actually what we were hoping to achieve, but Cardano doesn't have this functionality yet. So we had to do the second best thing after that. So in that script that you generate, there are additional information. So one information is, and either because this is an option, give you an option, you have the pub key hash of your wallet, which basically only this wallet can anytime access the funds other than the script you define. So either the limit order that you define executes and that the funds still wait for you, whatever is the output of this limit order, or you can at any point in time come and cancel this order and return the funds to your wallet. So technically you have still very strong custody. However, this is via the script mechanism because when you create a script on Cardano and you want to lock funds in it, you always have to send them to the script address. And I think personally it's quite unfortunate because if you would be able to say, hey, those funds are actually in your wallet and they would physically be, then would be even better. But from the pure mechanism, that it's only available to your wallet, that's equivalent to some extent. The extent being you have to trust that the script actually guarantees that. So that's, like you have this extra small loosening of the trust, but still compared to all the other solutions that I'm aware of, it's like a big step, because in other solutions you have a big pool of assets, and then you contribute your assets to that pool, and you have to trust that the formula is correct. So like it's a lot of more trust that you have to have with that piece of the code, and also all the things which are like Tornado Cash and similar attack vectors. You can be involuntarily involved in your assets being blacklisted, and then you cannot send them to any centralized exchange, and so on. And this is really serious concern. So that, for example, is something that's very easily done with Programmable swaps, because you can easily prove these assets were always my ownership, and that I had condition. For example, I want to only interact with the KYC assets, and then if like somebody says, hey, but Tornado Cash, blah blah. No, my assets never touch to anything related to Tornado Cash. Yeah, so I wish it would be exactly that. So that's also why I've been very careful with wording there, because it's down. Like it's not. You cannot say the same things if it works like this, right? So we should be very careful with just saying like not loosening the custody, because technically it's all your custody, but technically speaking, it's now enforced by the script.
Okay. Hopefully at some point there might be a SIP that can be brought in that might do something that I'm not technical enough to know the full nuances of that, but I think it's a good solution there anyway in terms of custody. And the more we can keep custody of our own funds or like that, it's just unlocked the script, the better. Rather than you see so many different hacks and stuff like that out there. So I always tell people, custody of your own funds, unless you're actively trading and in a hardware wallet for the long term as well, just to add extra layers. So you touched on pools there as well, which generally come with AMM dexes, where you have your pool full of assets and trading, just the price keeps moving up and down based on what assets are in the pool. Will ye have pools, or how will ye be looking to attract liquidity into Axo? So you're building a lot of brilliant features and order types and stuff, but where are you looking at for liquidity?
Right. So let me answer the first question. It's like, why even we have this problem of total value lost, right, or locked, how we want to call it. It's coming from this simple mistake, done, like almost 7 years ago, that we have this AMM formula that for which to work at all requires a lot of funds locked, because the more funds are locked, the slower the price changes. And it still changes too much. So if you would go and exchange a stablecoin for a stablecoin, so let's say USDC for USDT on Uniswap, so the exchange currently, so the decentralized exchange with the biggest liquidity at the moment that uses AMM, you would be paying $30,000 more on Uniswap than on any centralized exchange, which for me is mind-boggling, and is like one example of how inefficient AMM is. But another thing where I show you how inefficient it is, okay, but now you have this tremendous amount of money locked in that pool, and you're only using 0.5% of that pool, because if you are moving only between 0.99 to 0.101 price range between this pair, you're only using 0.5% of all the TVL. So 99.5 is just because the formula is broken. Now, think of it from the different perspective, right? You want to sell something, somebody wants to buy something, right? It's a simple exchange. So what do? Like you have your intent, and this intent may be vaguely defined, because maybe you want to slightly get a better deal. So let's say like you start with the price, and this price slightly decreases to the point where you are sure, like, okay, that's the lowest I'll go, right? And some people do, for example, like with the limit orders, etc. And somebody may have similar approach elsewhere, but at some point so you cross the spread and transaction happens. But really, for this transaction to happen, you only have to have one person who is willing to sell and one person who is willing to buy, and they have to meet at the price point. And that's the entire purpose of the exchange. So if you allow those two people to do it efficiently, then there is nobody else needed. There's no need for a crazy large TVL. And, of course, the larger number of dollars in the market, the more liquid it feels. It's easier to exchange, right? But technically for those people, they could still exchange as well, just between two of them. And building a protocol that's extremely efficient by the nature, you will have, like even the pairs that are extremely obscure, like that feels like literally over-the-counter trades, OTCs, still being able to meet and transact with each other. So this kind of removes this like huge requirement for total value locked for it to work efficiently, because I don't know, like maybe with 1% of the players on other decks, you would have already superior experience, like in trading. And then the whole protocol is centered about incentivizing on the efficient price discovery and tightening the spread. So we don't have the order book, but programmable swaps are converted at each block to virtual order book. So that's when you go to the Axo website, you actually see the actual order book. Even you may have like a strategy that's DCAing into index, right? It still is going to show as part of the order book for the relevant pair. And then, like you see where's the price, and also you see, like what's the spread. So, like how much people want to be paid to execute that trade. So like you have to cross the spread between the best bid and the lowest ask. Then that's the point in time where you can really do the things that the exchange should be doing, which is I'm telling you, hey, if you will be providing the market with your liquidity in this tight spread or tightening it, then you will be being assigned more rewards from the treasury. So basically you're rewarded for improving the market. You're not basically just paid for losing your funds to this magical pool of inefficiency. Now you are literally incentivized. Okay, so hi, I think this pair is very liquid, for instance, right? And the spread is large. I'm going to tighten it because this is literally just free money sitting on the counter. And I think that should be the goal of any exchange, improving the experience of the traders and tightening the spread and incentivizing deep liquidity, but not deep liquidity, like at infinity or zero, but deep liquidity around the spread. And that's the incentivization model that we are creating.
Okay, so just if I have a right understanding of this, if I'm providing liquidity, I provide the range that I'm willing to allow that liquidity to be used in, am I? Or have I picked up something wrong there?
So first you pick one of the many market making strategies that we are going to provide from the template, or you take any of them and you tweak it, or you create your own. And then, like when you lock it into the market basically sees where you are positioning yourself. And basically based on this positioning and when the actual spread is crossed, for each crossing of the spread, you get additional rebate. So it's like very classical exchange mechanism where you're basically being paid rebates for the transactions that you've created. So now, like you as a market maker, you are not paying the fees to the exchange. The protocol itself is paying you the fees that you provided this liquidity. And it's also easy to identify who market maker is, because market maker always is sitting at the spread and the liquidity is waiting for the transaction. So somebody else is coming to that liquidity. And this allows you to take control of the risk as well, because let's be honest, like market making is the risk. Like a lot of people learned it the very bad way with AMM, which was basically I've locked the funds, but every time I lock, I lose a lot of money, right? Why I'm losing, like this was 100% yellow, why am I losing money? It's crazy, right? Well, it's not crazy. It's because the risk model is so bad for the people locking the assets in it. And now you define your own inventory risk, because, like, I don't know what's your goal, but I bet it's, like ADA, Euro, or USD, right? That you want to have more at the end. And let's say, like Hosky or Bison or whatever other token that we might want to provide liquidity for, it's just inventory risk. We're only holding it to be able to provide liquidity. So first of all, you don't have to provide 50-50, which is already insane, right? Like if this is my inventory risk, why do I have to have such a high inventory risk to start with, right? So let's say you may say, okay, I'm providing 80% ADA and 20% Hosky, right? But not only that, I want my inventory risk to converge to 20%. So it isn't like on a traditional exchange the more people want to sell Hosky, the more Hosky you are left with, so your inventory risk increases. Now you are going to be like this, okay, so I'm like now 30% of the Hosky, so I'm shifting my spot price for the market making, and it's called like reservation price, slightly to one side, still making the spread, still staying in like the safe zone, but now I'm reducing my inventory of Hosky. So I'm, like incentivizing, like reducing it back to 20%. And then you can add additional risk control on the mechanism of drops. So let's say when the price of Hosky drops, let's say by 20%, like in a day, or like drops below some threshold at which you bought it or whatever, then you can say, okay, this automatically means I'm closing my position, taking my profits from the market making, selling all the Hosky, and bang, I'm out of the market.
Okay, yeah, I really like that, the idea of the different strategies, because not all of us have the same risk appetite, really. And even within my own portfolio, I generally split it up. So certain parts of it go to more risk and some with less risk, obviously. So when you can have multiple strategies for different segments of your portfolio, I like that. And that it's not 50-50 as well. So that's something that catches a lot of people out, is that they have to put up 50-50 of whatever they're putting up, the same value of ADA versus whatever the other token they're trading against. So will there be single-sided liquidity, or will you always have to put up some portion of the other token as well?
It's absolutely up to you decide. You can have 100% one-sided liquidity, so we could say like at least 100% ADA. You would still incur the inventory risk on the pair you are making. However, this inventory risk would always converge to be almost full in ADA, right? So you would be left with very minuscule reminder of some other token. However, what you have to take into the account, because you're taking the lower risk, there is like you kind of like literally offering one side of the trade. So like liquidity in the order book has two sides. So we are like kind of making only half of the market. So you are reducing how frequently you make the market. However, you also very significantly reduce the risk you're taking. And I also want to touch this point because we have, like two-sided, one-sided, but you can also have multi-sided, because let's say, like your starting point is ADA, right? But then it's not just Hosky. You say, okay, Hosky inventory risk is 20%, Bison is 10%, some World Mobile token is 30%, right? And the rest want to stay in the ADA. And then you can have multi, like asset market making.
Okay, yeah, there'll definitely be a lot of interesting strategies. I can see myself spending a lot of time trying to figure them out, and hopefully creating tutorials on the process as well to try and help people as well, because sometimes people jump too quick into new types of DeFi. I'd say from what you're saying there, there's going to be some massive benefits for people. Just make sure you understand the different risk levels before getting into stuff as well. But that will definitely cater to a lot of people's risk levels. On AMMs, generally the way they attract in liquidity and to combat impermanent loss is they do yield farming. Will you be doing yield farming in this model, or you won't be using that?
So I believe we'll be doing something better than yield farming. So yield farming is kind of like the insurance fund to pay for your losses. That's how I see that, because even when you look at the level of yield farming, it's usually exactly covering your losses, hopefully. Sometimes it doesn't. So what's the better thing to do? Well, it's better to incentivize people to do the things in the market that bring the value to the market. So we've mentioned, like tightening the spread, but also there will be pairs that don't have enough liquidity, right? So you maybe want to incentivize people to provide those pairs. And now we shift the narrative slightly, because we shift the narrative to, hey, those people, right, are taking additional risk on, right, and they should be rewarded for that risk. So we are smart incentivizing people to take the smart risk, because you technically know, like what you're taking, what risk you are taking, and for what. And of course, like it's all a lottery. We don't know where the market is going to go. If we would know where the market is going, we wouldn't be sitting here. We'd probably, like drinking pina coladas on some nice beach. Then you can focus on three things. The first one is rewarding people for the risk taken, because technically they provide the value to the protocol and the other users of the protocol by providing the liquidity. So that's the first part. Well, the second part is creating the engagement, right? Because like when you are still small, you want to attract people because, hey, again, this is a new thing, as you exactly explained, and this takes time to understand, to explain, and especially like people like you, like if you are covering us, then you put extra time because like for anybody teaching, there's like so much more that goes behind. Like it's one thing to understand the concept, and it's like to be able to teach it, and then like that's another vector. Like you incentivize like people for the using protocol, but also we have this idea of rewarding people for creating the content that the community sees valuable. And then third, it's like the protocol itself is embedded in some bigger system, right? So for instance, like a lot of the protocols on Cardano are embedded in the Cardano ecosystem, and the Cardano ecosystem is embedded in the world economy. So, the crazy people in the US go and say they are going to raise interest rates, and suddenly like, the entire crypto market is bleeding. And if you are able to adjust, like the yields on the platform, well, you can help people, like to survive the hard times, speak to so then you can basically also have a mechanism in the treasury to basically to adjust to changing the market conditions that help the protocol to remain healthy even like in the worst scenarios, right?
Okay, yeah, I like that it's not just a one size fits all, because generally AMM comes out, you will have yield farming to try and attract liquidity and to counteract impermanent loss in the beginning. But it gets to the stage a lot of times where the yield farming rewards aren't even covering the impermanent risk that you have, or to me, it doesn't fit my risk portfolio anyway to try it for the very small percentage you might gain. It's good to hear there will be different options there. And on that, so people providing liquidity or doing the different activities will earn the fees that are paid on the desk or on the trading platform by the market makers or by the people submitting the orders. Will that also pay out the Axo token for your version of yield farming as well, is it?
100%. So the first part, like of course, like it's coming from the liquidity takers. So like they pay the fee which goes to the market makers, but there's also like 40% of all the Axo tokens reserved for as a platform rewards, and that also would be used to further reward like all the liquidity providers.
Okay, and just on that, ye have a fairly small supply on, or overall supply of your token. Is it 20? Oh no, not 21 million, 42, is it?
42. So basically, the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Okay, nice. And what will the token be used for then as well? So can it be used on the platform for fees or anything, or where does the token fit into the overall picture?
Very good question. So we've been classified as a payment token in Switzerland, and like you get the classification for the token because of what your token is doing. So we had our like white paper reviewed by the Swiss government, and basically it provides the payment functionality. So you pay like for the actions on the platform, for accessing the oracles that the signal engine is providing, for accessing the backtesting platform, and a lot of other functionality that the platform provides.
Okay. One thing just before we move off liquidity, institutional side, you have a history in the institutional side of things. Are you looking at trying to bring that type of liquidity in? Because that's really what crypto needs. Is some people say they don't want institutional, but bigger picture, we need that, and we need regulation to bring it all together if we want crypto to go where a lot of us believe it can. So are you looking at the institutional side?
Yes, we are. And also to all the skeptics, let me just ask one question. So Cardano liquidity at the moment, like the TVL, is I think like 100 million. Don't you want 6 trillion of liquidity from just one source of the institution, right? Because that's like one of the use cases, like we are talking in the background, like the people we know from the traditional finance. And, that's, I just want to show this example because at the moment what we are doing in DeFi and the blockchain is like frivolous, like in a sense, okay, it's cool, but what really problem does it solve, right? It just only solves the problem that exists in this closed ecosystem, right? And that's like intrinsic like mathematics. Okay, I can write anything I want in mathematics, but this can be arbitrary nonsense that I just invented, just coherent with itself, right? So what really is going to bring the value and the real volume is actually solving the problem that people have outside of the crypto space. That's always was the goal. And Bitcoin itself started solving the issue of the counterparty risk. Like you had people's money confiscated from the bank accounts in Cyprus, Venezuela, etc. Right? So like maybe we don't need government, or maybe we don't need government because they constantly keep screwing the economy. But we know what happened to that movement, right? Because it was hijacked by the opportunists, and it's like somehow middled. But yes, we are talking to a lot of people from our network. We are also extending that network, and there is surprisingly large interest. I think surprisingly to everybody in crypto. Like unless somebody maybe is talking to those people as well. Interest in what blockchain can offer. However, all of them have very specific needs, and frankly, a lot of that's being done on the blockchain is not addressing that. So as soon as we can address a lot of that, a lot of more can be bring directly onto the blockchain. And the moment we do that, then we start the shift of the world from the traditional finance into the digital asset era. And when you think of that, everything that exists on the planet can be digitized. The moment it's digitized, it's so much more frictionless to trade and exchange.
Okay. Yeah, good to hear that is part of the vision of where it will go. And I'll say when, because they're going to come in. When institutionals come in, would you be looking at outside of crypto assets as well, or will you be purely concentrating on crypto assets on Axo Trade?
We need to do both, right? So technically, the way I'm looking at it, there is no difference between both, because let's say we digitized some very important frequently traded assets in the world onto the blockchain. Technically speaking, once it's on the blockchain, there is no difference of that with any other asset that's on the blockchain. So really, by solving the problem of this asset digitization and solving separately the problem of trading, like caters both to both use cases, as long as the actual solution you're building, for example, like allows for KYC that like some institution may require, or maybe like it requires some other things. So as long as they can replicate the needs and still, like the blockchain provides the value, then they would be interested on boarding onto the blockchain.
Okay, so I could go deeper into that, and I might get you on another time. There's a few topics I'd like to go deeper on, especially the institutional side, your views on that and crypto and everything, and even your order types and things like that. But I realize time's getting on. Community had a few questions, and then I have just a few to finish up. So community questions, main ones here I'm looking up. When airdrop was one that I got of when, so that was from the ISPO, the token that was earned there.
So the airdrop is going to be dropped at the platform launch, and that we see, like as the first way to do that. We've seen what happens with all the speculative assets, and that's not the only issue that is related, because people may not realize that until they go and fill their taxes, but the moment the asset's already trading, it has the price. So when you get airdrop, you have to pay tax for that, right? So you better have it airdrop when it's still worth nothing, or it's worth close to nothing, right? So don't worry, there's a very good reason for doing things a specific way. And like a lot of those things, they are going to happen exactly at launch.
Great. Next one was when NFT. So there was an NFT mentioned at one stage. There was questions around that. I know you've talked about it in spaces, but trying to put it all into one here.
I know people are waiting for that, and it breaks my heart because the NFTs are waiting. They all created. Also, they're very nice. We've put a few unique ideas in the NFTs that nobody did before. However, the mechanism, and actually we wanted to release the NFTs at the rebranding time, but the release mechanism had a couple bugs on that. One actually wasn't the bug, we just were very unlucky with the blockchain. So when we run like one large scale test or something going with the blockchain, I won't go into the detail, I don't want to fad anyone, everything is okay with Cardano, but this gave us a false positive, so we had to investigate, and there was like another issue that we had to solve. So I'm yet waiting for it to be ready for release, but the NFTs are ready and waiting. So as soon as we can release that in confidence, it's going to be dropped to everyone.
Great. Looking here, I think we've covered a lot. One question was around, could someone create strategies for trading NFTs? Now, I know you aren't going to be an NFT platform, so it mightn't be something in the beginning, but could someone create, like you said, you can create your stop loss orders and stuff for trades? Could that be done with NFTs? Like if the floor price falls to X, then your trade gets executed. Could something like that be in the future?
Absolutely. So technically, there is nothing different between non-fungible tokens and fungible ones, except that there's only one non-fungible token. There's multiple same fungible tokens. So you can perfectly get your NFT, lock it in programmable swap and the trading strategy. However, what you have to realize, because it's non-fungible, there is much less liquidity for that. So for one specific NFT, that I think could only be done efficiently when there's like arbitrage integration with a lot of NFT stores, because what you would really want to happen is, like this programmable swap to be listed or somehow arbitrage between the stores. So, like when somebody can view that, so then you can view it on every store and stuff like that. However, we haven't explored that at all, but I see, that's something that you have really to think seriously about, this being visible on every terminal that is for trading NFTs, to basically, because the liquidity is such an issue. So, however, you can also do a lot of other cool stuff, because most of the NFTs have specific rarity properties. Well, you can do rarity trading strategy. So, for instance, like you're pricing the rarities based on some metrics, and then you are accumulating NFTs, then you are reducing the amount of NFTs, and you can think of it as like a momentum-based trading strategy, right? So NFTs prices go up, okay, so you load up, okay, then they start going down, okay, you're slowing down. So like some, for example, like form of divergence indicator that you use there.
Okay, yeah, that would definitely be an interesting one to try. And so you start out with a common NFT and you're looking to end up with an epic or something, and obviously you need more funds for liquidity. But getting a bit off topic, but it could be an interesting area as well. I think I've covered most of the other ones. The final ones that I have are your security audits. Have they started yet, or are they completed, or where are you on that?
No, we haven't started the security audit yet, and that's for a simple reason. We are still developing. So we have the platform running internally. We have, like multiple private testnets deployed on a Kubernetes cluster, and we have everything working from the front end to all the forms of the backend and the protocol itself. However, the work isn't done, so you only start the audit when you say, okay, I'm ready to take my hands off the code and allow you to read that. And you usually, in work with the auditor, you still change the code, because like that's like interactive process. They give you the feedback, you do the changes that they provide in the feedback, and then they provide the audit on the final code form. And then for a specific stage in the code, the audit applies. So we aren't there yet. However, there are some parts of the platform that are not the core trading protocol that we are starting the audit on. But they are like isolated, right? So we can start auditing them independently. So that's what we are starting doing this month. And that's also why I always say, like, when launch, well, when it's ready, because would you rather wait 1, 3, or 6 months more, or would get a broken product that's going to lose you money, right? I like to compare it, to a centralized institution, because I think it helps to change the framework of mind. What's the difficulty, right? Especially doing something difficult. If I'm, like your local commercial bank, right? Well, then you have to hack into the server to be able to exploit whatever setup is inside. Anything that's decentralized, you literally have access to everything. So you are already inside the bank, you have access to everything, and you better hope that you cannot break anything. So that's completely different level of assurance that you have to provide on the protocol level.
Okay, yeah, you did get on to my next question, which is when launch, which is always the popular question. When ready is what we're going to get. But public testnet or something like that, is there any indication on when we might see something like that? Obviously, it doesn't need the completed audit, but
I can give you some indications, but this is just, like a headless idiot on the internet guessing.
These are official launch dates, yes?
No. Well, basically, like that's first, like there was like clearly to define the trajectory, right? First, we get to the point where internally happy with the whole system, including with our own, like full testing, red teaming, etc. Then we pass it out to the auditor. Auditors usually take, like between 1 and 2 months, and we have written a lot of complex code, right? So that's going to be quite a process. We already engage with a lot of auditors in talks about that. Then once that's done, then you have, let's call it like the community test. And that's actually a famous quote from the test is broken. In a sense, like companies like Facebook, like they just release the broken software to the world because, like hundreds of millions of users are going to find bugs much quicker than, like the best QA team on the planet. However, like having done the steps of our internal and the audit due diligence, then we should release it to the users because then, like I see it as another form of the audit, right? Because we have very intelligent users in the community, right? Some of them actually write code too, so they may look at this perspective. We have very intelligent traders in the community, right? Then they may comment on some actual functionality of the platform. It's maybe not a bug, it may be just usability feature. And then, of course, we have the prospective users of the platform and who the better can comment what they like and they don't than those users, right? So that's, like the final test before the takeoff. And if it's like everything good with the public testnet, then the launch.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think public testnet is always important because generally from working in development myself, I see you have testware, you have frameworks, and you follow the frameworks of how to test certain aspects. But when you put it out into the public, they will generally try and do things a lot different than a developer would have hit certain buttons to go to things. And it's a must-have before the final release anyway. We've gone on a lot longer than I planned. I really enjoyed it, got a lot of value out of it. I do appreciate your time, and I hope this has given people a wider insight into what you're bringing to the market. One final one, actually. There's so much coming to the market. What will version 1 contain? Or what could we expect to see? There's a lot of order types on the site. There's a lot going on, but in a first version of the product, what could we get? And we'll close it up then.
Great question, Paul. I would say it's very simple because actually what we are building, we're not building, like indexes separately. We are not building DCA separately. What we're really building is a platform that uses programmable swaps, and programmable swaps enable all those features. So it's extremely likely you will get everything at launch. And if you wouldn't get everything at launch, it's for a simple reason. We could, like in a sense, throttle it at the launch, but more via the user interface features, not the actual protocol code, because then you want to gradual rollout to see like how the market behaves, how it's using, and then like it's the testnet after the testnet, you can call it, right? It's just like responsible release because then you can closely observe what's going on with that. However, to give a simple answer, frankly, I think you will get everything at launch.
Great. I look forward to seeing that. And hopefully maybe we will hook up sometimes before launch as well to give an update after a public testnet. Maybe, obviously, I'll be doing videos on it, but you're very welcome to come on as well before or after launch at some point as well. So thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. Anything we haven't covered, leave questions down below or go to, what's the best way to follow you guys? Or the best place to keep up to date?
Well, there are two best places in my mind. The first one is Twitter, so @Axo Trade. And the second one is the Axo Discord. and you can find it by going to the Twitter. Also, Paul, I would be very happy to join you, like post-launch and, like talk about all the details that, happened in the between and, like the actual product. And thank you for having me.
Great. Yeah. So I'll put them links down below. And as I hear updates as well, I'll be following closely. I'll mention them in different videos as well. So make sure you subscribe for that one as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.